The darkest hour in any worthy endeavor is not when you fail, it's when you succeed just enough to keep going, but not enough to see results. And it's in that hour, when nothing seems to be working, that most people walk away, just steps before the breakthrough. Good evening. Tonight, I want to talk with you about one of the most misunderstood principles of success, one that separates those who achieve their goals from those who spend their lives wondering what might have been. It's the principle of persistence in the face of nothing, not in the face of obvious progress. Not when the wind is at your back, but when nothing seems to be working, when the results you expected haven't come, when the effort you've given feels wasted, when every reasonable voice around you, and that voice inside your own head, says, "It's time to quit." That moment, my friend, is the most critical moment in your entire journey. Because here's what most people don't understand: the turning point in any endeavor is almost always invisible. You see, we live in a world that worships the visible. We want to see progress. We want to measure results. We want confirmation that we're on the right path. And when we don't get it, when the scale doesn't move, when the account stays empty, when the door stays closed, we assume we've failed. But that assumption is the greatest tragedy in human potential. Let me tell you something about how success actually works. It doesn't work in a straight line. It doesn't reward you in proportion to your effort, at least not at first. Success works more like a seed planted in dark soil. For weeks, for months, there's nothing to see. The ground looks as empty as the day you planted it. But beneath the surface, something extraordinary is happening. Roots are forming. Strength is building. The organism is preparing itself for the moment when it will break through into the light. And the person who digs up the seed one day before it sprouts, that person will never see the tree. Now, I want to be very clear about something. I'm not talking about stubbornness. I'm not talking about clinging to a bad idea or refusing to learn. Persistence without intelligence is just foolishness. But what I am talking about is this: when you've chosen a worthy goal, when you've committed to a sound plan, when you're doing the work day after day, even when nothing seems to be happening, that's when you must hold on with everything you have. Because in that moment, you're not just working toward your goal. You're becoming the person who deserves that goal. Let me give you an example. Thomas Edison conducted thousands of experiments before he created a working light bulb. Thousands. And when someone asked him about his failures, he said something profound. "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." You see, Edison understood something that most people miss. He understood that every attempt, every effort, every so-called failure was actually information. It was data. It was education. It was preparation for the one attempt that would succeed. And here's the thing: Edison couldn't have known which attempt would be the one. The $8, the $9, the 999th, he had no way of knowing. But he knew this: if he quit, he'd guarantee failure. If he continued, he had a chance. And that, my friend, is the choice you face every single day. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, "But Earl, how do I know if I should persist or if I should change course? How do I know if I'm being persistent or just stubborn?" Good question. And here's the answer: you persist in the goal, but you remain flexible in the method. In other words, your destination stays fixed, but your route can change. If what you're doing isn't working, you try something different. You adjust, you learn, you adapt, but you don't abandon the goal just because the path is harder than you expected. Think about a pilot flying from New York to California. The pilot doesn't fly in a perfectly straight line. He makes constant adjustments for wind, weather, traffic. He might be off course 90% of the time, but he never loses sight of the destination. He adjusts, corrects, and keeps moving forward. And eventually he arrives. That's exactly what you must do with your goals. Now, let me share with you the central truth of this message, a truth that, if you really understand it, will change everything. The only thing standing between you and your goal is the story you keep telling yourself about why you can't achieve it. Think about that. Really think about it. What story are you telling yourself right now? Is it the story that says you're not talented enough, not educated enough, not connected enough, that it's too late, that the market has changed, that other people have advantages you don't have? Those stories feel true. They feel reasonable. But they're not. They're just comfortable excuses that protect you from the discomfort of continuing. Because here's what persistence really requires: It requires you to keep moving forward when every fiber of your being wants to stop. It requires you to show up tomorrow even though today produced nothing. It requires you to believe in an outcome you can't yet see. And that's hard. It's the hardest thing in the world. But it's also the only thing that works. You see, most people quit at the exact moment when success is closest. They quit when they're tired, when they're discouraged, when the initial excitement has worn off and all that's left is the daily grind. They quit because they don't realize that what they're feeling is not a sign of failure. It's a sign they're in the refining process. Success isn't about talent. It's not about luck. It's about outlasting your own doubts long enough to break through to the other side. And here's the beautiful truth. Every person who has ever accomplished anything significant has been exactly where you are right now. They've felt what you're feeling. They've doubted what you're doubting. The only difference is they didn't quit. Abraham Lincoln failed in business. He lost election after election. He suffered from depression. But he became President of the United States and saved a nation. Colonel Sanders was rejected over 1,000 times before someone agreed to try his chicken recipe. He was in his 60s, and he built an empire. Walt Disney was fired from a newspaper for lacking imagination. He went bankrupt. His first studio failed, but he never quit on his dream. These weren't special people with special gifts. They were ordinary people who made an extraordinary decision to persist when nothing was working. And you can make that same decision right now, today. You know, there's something I've observed over many years of studying successful people, something that might trouble you at first, but I think you need to hear it. Most people who quit just before they would have succeeded. Now, I'm not saying that to make you feel bad. I'm saying it because it's true. And the reason it happens so often is both simple and maddening. The moment of breakthrough gives no advance notice. Think about that for a moment. There's no bell that rings, no sign that appears, no voice from heaven that says, just 3 more days and everything changes. No telegram that arrives saying, hold on, your success is scheduled to arrive next Tuesday at 2 p.m. Nothing. You're just working, struggling, pushing day after day, seeing the same results or lack of results, the same closed doors, the same silence, the same empty inbox. And then one Tuesday or one Thursday or one random Wednesday afternoon, something shifts. A call comes, a door opens. A person says yes, and suddenly everything you've been working toward begins to materialize. But here's the critical part. Here's what you must understand. That Tuesday didn't happen because of what you did on Tuesday. It happened because of what you did on all those Mondays and Wednesdays and Fridays before it. It happened because of the accumulation of effort you couldn't see. It happened because invisible wheels were turning beneath the surface of your visible life. You see, we live in a cause and effect universe. Nothing happens by accident. When you plant seeds, real seeds or metaphorical ones, those seeds will produce a harvest. It's law. But nature doesn't operate on your schedule. Nature doesn't care that you're tired. Nature doesn't care that you're discouraged. Nature simply follows its own immutable timeline. And that timeline is hidden from you. Let me tell you what this means in practical terms. It means that the day you quit might be the day before your client was going to call. The week you give up might be the week before your manuscript was going to be accepted. The month you walk away might be the month before your business was going to turn profitable. You'll never know, because you left before the harvest. Now, I can already hear what you're thinking. But Earl, how long am I supposed to keep going? How long do I wait for something that might never come? And that's a fair question. But let me answer it with another question. What else are you going to do? If you quit this goal, this dream, this business, this creation, what will you do instead? Start something else. Well, that new thing will also require persistence. It will also have an invisible turning point. It will also test your resolve right before it rewards your effort. So you can quit this and start over with something else, facing the exact same challenge. Or you can realize that persistence isn't about this particular goal. It's about who you become in the process of pursuing it. Because here's the secret that successful people understand: the turning point isn't just about external results. It's about internal transformation. The turning point is when you change. When you develop the discipline, the faith, the character to keep going when there's no evidence that going forward makes any sense at all. And the magnificent truth is this: once you develop that quality, Once you become the kind of person who doesn't quit when nothing is working, you carry that quality into everything you do for the rest of your life. That's the real turning point. Not the success itself, but becoming the person who generates success through sheer persistence. And that moment is happening right now, whether you see it or not. If let me ask you something that might shake you a bit. What if every hour you've invested, every early morning, every late night, every moment you showed up when you didn't feel like it, what if all of it has been building towards something you simply can't see yet? And what if, by quitting now, you're about to walk away from a fortune that's already been deposited in your account? You just haven't received the statement yet. Stay with me for a moment. You see, we've been conditioned to expect immediate feedback. We flip a switch, the light comes on. We turn the key, the engine starts. We send a message, we get a reply. Instant cause and effect, and so we've come to believe that's how everything works. But it's not. Some of the most powerful forces in the universe operate in complete silence. A tree doesn't make noise while it grows. Your body doesn't announce when it's healing a wound. A child's mind doesn't ring a bell every time it masters a new concept. The accumulation happens quietly, invisibly, without fanfare. And your efforts, they work the same way. Every conversation you have, every skill you practice, every page you write, every call you make, these things don't just disappear into the void when they don't produce immediate results. They accumulate. They compound. They build upon each other in ways you cannot track, cannot measure, and cannot see. Think of it like this. Imagine a massive dam holding back an enormous reservoir of water. And every day, you carry a single bucket of water to that reservoir. One bucket. Day after day, week after week. You pour it in and nothing happens. The dam doesn't break. The water doesn't overflow. There's no dramatic transformation. Just one more bucket added to an already vast reservoir. Now, to the person carrying the bucket, it feels futile. It feels like nothing is happening. But here's what that person doesn't realize: every bucket is raising the water level. Imperceptibly, yes. Invisibly, absolutely. But measurably if you had the right instruments. And one day, one specific day that you couldn't predict, one more bucket tips the scale. The water reaches the top of the dam, and suddenly everything changes. The water flows, the turbines turn, the energy generates, the lights come on. But here's the critical truth: it wasn't that bucket that did it. It was all of them. Every single one mattered. Every single one was necessary. Remove any one of those buckets from the equation, and the water doesn't reach the top. The dam doesn't overflow. The lights don't come on. This is exactly how your efforts work. That client meeting that went nowhere, it sharpened your pitch for the next one. That article nobody read, it improved your writing for the one that goes viral. That day you practiced when you felt terrible, it built the muscle memory that will carry you through your breakthrough performance. Nothing is wasted. Nothing disappears. It all accumulates. You know, there's a fascinating study about bamboo. The Chinese bamboo tree is particularly remarkable. You plant the seed, you water it, you fertilize it, you care for it. And for 5 years, 5 full years, nothing happens, no sprout, no shoot, no visible growth whatsoever. But in the 5th year, that bamboo grows 90 feet in just 6 weeks. Now the question is, did the tree grow 90 feet in 6 weeks? Or did it grow 90 feet in 5 years? The answer, of course, is 5 years. Because all that time beneath the surface, it was developing a massive root system, a foundation strong enough to support 90 feet of growth. And that's precisely what's happening with you right now. Beneath the surface of your visible results, you're building something. You're developing skills. You're making connections. You're training your mind. You're building the foundation that will support the success you're working toward. The effort never disappears. It accumulates in silence. And one day, maybe tomorrow, maybe next month, maybe next year, you're going to experience your 6-week growth period. And when other people see your sudden success, they won't realize they're watching the culmination of years of silent accumulation. But you'll know that every single effort mattered. So keep carrying your bucket. Keep watering your bamboo. The accumulation is happening. Whether you see it or not, file your eyes for us, not for eye to eye. Here's something that might unsettle you at first. Every setback you've experienced, every rejection, every closed door, every plan that fell apart, what if those weren't signs that you should quit? What if they were signs that you're getting closer? I know that sounds backward. It sounds like the kind of thing people say to make you feel better when things aren't working out. But bear with me, because what I'm about to tell you is based on observable fact, not pleasant fiction. You see, we've been taught to view our mistakes as evidence of inadequacy. We try something, it doesn't work, and we interpret that as a judgment on our ability. I failed, therefore I'm a failure. It didn't work, therefore it won't work. I was rejected, therefore I'm not good enough. But that's not what's actually happening. What's actually happening is something far more useful, far more practical, and far more encouraging than you might think. Here's the truth: every time you attempt something, and it doesn't produce the result you wanted, you've just eliminated one approach that doesn't work. You've just gathered data. You've just received information that 99% of people who never tried don't have. And that information is valuable. Think about a scientist in a laboratory. She's searching for a cure, testing compound after compound. One doesn't work. Does she interpret that as personal failure? Does she conclude that she's not meant to find the cure? Does she quit? Of course not. She writes down the results, marks that compound off her list, and moves to the next one. Because she understands something crucial. She's not failing her way into defeat. She's learning her way toward discovery. Every negative result brings her closer to the positive one. Not in spite of the failures, but because of them. Now, I want you to consider something. When you were learning to walk as a child, you fell down. Hundreds of times. You tumbled, you stumbled, you crashed into furniture. And yet, somehow, you didn't interpret those falls as evidence that walking wasn't for you. You didn't conclude that you weren't a walking person. You simply got up and tried again. Why? Because at that age, you didn't yet have the concept of failure as an identity. You only understood it as information. Oh, that didn't work. Let me try it differently. And eventually you walked. And then you ran. And you've been doing it ever since without even thinking about it. The same principle applies to everything you're attempting now. That business proposal that was rejected. It's teaching you what that particular client values or doesn't value. That's information you didn't have before. Next time you'll adjust. Next time you'll be sharper. Next time you'll speak more directly to what they need. That product that didn't sell, it's showing you what the market wants or how you need to position what you're offering. That's data you couldn't have gotten any other way. Now you can pivot, refine, repackage. That relationship that ended, it's revealing what you need, what you don't need, what patterns you need to break. That's wisdom you can carry forward. You see, what we call failure is actually course correction. It's the universe's way of saying, not quite. Try this instead. It's not a stop sign, it's a detour sign. It's not telling you to turn back, it's telling you to adjust your route. And here's the remarkable part: the more so-called failures you experience, the more refined your approach becomes. You're not moving further from success, you're circling closer to it. Each attempt narrows the gap between where you are and where you're trying to go. Thomas Edison said it perfectly. I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. And then he found the one way that did work. And he changed the world. But he could only find that one way by going through the 10,000 that didn't. So here's what I want you to understand. Those setbacks you're experiencing aren't evidence that you're on the wrong path. They're evidence that you're on a path. You're in the game. You're learning. You're gathering intelligence that will make your eventual success not just possible, but inevitable. Every piece of information brings you closer. Every adjustment makes you sharper. Every so-called failure is actually progress disguised as disappointment. You're not failing. You're calibrating. And calibration is how you hit the target. Persesti isantiel agency over time. I'm going to tell you something that might challenge what you've always believed about success. What if the smartest decision you've ever made, the most intelligent thing you've ever done, isn't some brilliant insight or clever strategy? What if it's simply showing up again tomorrow? Now, I know that doesn't sound very impressive. We've been taught to worship genius, to admire the flash of inspiration, to celebrate the people who seem to figure everything out instantly. We want to believe that success comes from having the right idea at the right moment, that one brilliant stroke that changes everything. But that's not how it works, not really. Let me tell you what I've discovered after studying successful people for decades. The difference between those who achieve their goals and those who don't rarely comes down to intelligence, in the traditional sense. It doesn't come down to IQ points or academic credentials or natural talent. It comes down to something far simpler and far more powerful: the willingness to keep going when keeping going makes no logical sense. You see, intelligence, real intelligence, isn't just about solving problems quickly. It's about solving problems eventually. And the person who stays in the game long enough to find the solution will always outperform the person who quits, because the solution didn't arrive on their preferred schedule. Let me put it another way. Imagine two people standing in front of a locked door. One person is brilliant, high AQ, quick thinking, naturally gifted. The other person is average in every measurable way. The brilliant person tries 10 different keys. None of them work. He analyzes the situation, concludes it's not worth his time, and walks away to find an easier door. The average person, she just keeps trying keys. 50 keys, 100 keys, 200 keys, and on the 201st attempt, the door opens. Now, who was more intelligent? The person who made the clever decision to quit, or the person who understood that persistence itself is a form of intelligence, perhaps the highest form? Here's what most people miss. Brilliance without persistence is just potential. It's like having a powerful car with no fuel. Impressive to look at, but it doesn't take you anywhere. But persistence transforms even modest ability into extraordinary results. Because persistence does something that raw intelligence alone cannot do. It compounds your efforts over time. Think about it this way. Every day you show up, you're not just repeating the same action. You're improving. You're learning. You're refining. You're building connections, developing skills, gaining insights that you didn't have yesterday. And all of that accumulates. The writer who writes every day for a year doesn't just have 365 pages. She has 365 days of improved craft. Each page is slightly better than the one before. By the end of the year, she's not the same writer who started. She's exponentially better. The salesperson who makes 100 calls doesn't just have 100 conversations. He has 100 lessons in human psychology, 100 refinements to his pitch, 100 data points about what works and what doesn't. This is intelligence in action, not the flash of insight, but the steady accumulation of wisdom through repeated effort. You know, there's a reason why marathon runners beat sprinters in a marathon. It's not because marathon runners are faster. It's because they understand that the race isn't about speed. It's about endurance. It's about the intelligence to pace yourself, to conserve energy, to keep moving when your body is screaming at you to stop. And life works the same way. Success isn't a sprint. It's not about who gets the quickest result. It's about who's still in the race when everyone else has gone home. Here's the beautiful truth. When you persist, you're not just being stubborn. You're being strategic. You're giving yourself more opportunities to succeed. You're allowing time to work in your favor. You're letting the law of averages catch up with you. Because here's what happens with persistence: eventually you get good. Eventually you make the right connections. Eventually you're in the right place at the right time. Not because of luck, but because you stayed in the game long enough for probability to work in your favor. The intelligent person understands this. The intelligent person knows that the surest path to success isn't the cleverest path, it's the longest path. It's the path you refuse to leave no matter what. So yes, be smart, learn, adapt, improve. But above all else, stay, because persistence isn't what you do when intelligence fails. Persistence is intelligence expressed over time. And time is on your side if you don't quit. UTMK. Let me share something with you that might sound impossible right now. What if I told you that you're not at the beginning of your journey, you're at the end? What if the finish line you've been working toward isn't miles away in some distant future, but just around the next corner? What if you're standing 3 feet from gold, as Napoleon Hill would say, and you're about to walk away? You'd probably think I was just trying to encourage you. You'd think I was being optimistic without evidence. But I'm not. I'm telling you something based on a pattern I've observed hundreds of times. And the pattern is this: people almost always underestimate how close they are to success. Now, why is that? Why do we consistently misjudge our proximity to breakthrough? It's not because we're pessimistic by nature. It's because of how progress actually works in the real world versus how we think it should work. We imagine progress as a steady, visible climb. We think it should look like a graph that goes up in a nice, predictable line. 1 unit of effort equals 1 unit of result. Day 1, we're at point A. Day 2, we're at point B. Day 3. Point C, nice and neat. Nice and measurable. But that's not reality. Reality doesn't work in straight lines. In reality, progress works more like compound interest. In the beginning, your returns are tiny, barely noticeable. You put in tremendous effort and see minimal results. Day after day, week after week, the needle hardly moves. And because you're measuring yourself against that false expectation, that straight line graph, you conclude you're failing. You conclude you're nowhere near success. But you're wrong. What's actually happening is this: you're in the accumulation phase. You're building momentum. You're laying groundwork. You're making invisible progress that will suddenly become visible when you reach critical mass. And here's the crucial part. Here's what changes everything. Critical mass often arrives right when you're most convinced it never will. Think about water being heated on a stove. At 99 degrees, it's just hot water, nothing special, nothing transformative. But add 1 more degree, just 1, and suddenly it boils. It bubbles, it creates steam. It generates energy that can power engines and move machinery. Did that transformation happen at 100 degrees? Or did it happen because of all the degrees that came before? All of them. Every single one was necessary. But the visible change occurred at the very end. And that's exactly where you are right now, somewhere between 95 and 99 degrees. You can't see the change yet. The water looks the same as it did 10 degrees ago. But it's not the same. It's fundamentally different. It's 1 degree, maybe 2 degrees away from transformation. Let me give you a real example. A man spends years writing a novel. He sends it to publisher after publisher, rejection after rejection, 20 rejections, 30, 50, and after each one, he's convinced he's no closer than he was on day 1. But he's wrong. With each rejection, he's refining his query letter. He's learning which publishers are right for his work. He's building resilience. He's improving his craft. And then, on submission number 51, a publisher says yes. And when the book is published and becomes successful, people marvel at his overnight success. They don't see the 50 rejections. They don't see the years of effort. But here's the key: rejection number 50. One wasn't fundamentally different from rejection number 5. The difference was that he'd persisted long enough to reach it. You see, success has a way of arriving suddenly, not because it is sudden, but because all the invisible preparation suddenly becomes visible all at once. The actor who, suddenly, becomes famous was actually auditioning for 20 years. The business that, overnight, becomes profitable was actually grinding in obscurity for 5 years. The artist who came out of nowhere was actually working in their studio every single day for a decade. The success looks sudden from the outside, but from the inside, it's the inevitable result of accumulated effort finally reaching the tipping point. And here's what I need you to understand. You have no idea how close you are to your tipping point. You can't see it, you can't measure it, but it's there. And every single day you continue. Every single effort you make, you're moving toward it. The tragedy is that most people quit at 99 degrees. They endure 99% of the difficulty, and then walk away right before the transformation. Don't be that person. You're closer than you think. The breakthrough isn't somewhere far off in the future. It's right there, just beyond your current line of sight. One more call, one more attempt, one more day. That might be all it takes. QITIUAINTSTHEONIOUTIONIR. I want you to imagine something for a moment, and I know this won't be comfortable, but stay with me. Imagine yourself 5 years from now. You're sitting in the same place you are today, maybe doing the same things, facing the same frustrations. And someone asks you, whatever happened to that dream you had, that business you were building, that book you were writing, that goal you were so passionate about? And you have to answer, I gave up. I quit when things got hard. How does that feel? That hollow ache in your chest, that sense of regret, of wondering what might have been, that's the price of quitting. And it's a price you'll pay every single day for the rest of your life. Now, I want you to hold that feeling for just a moment, because there's something important I need to tell you about it. You see, when you're in the middle of the struggle, when nothing's working and you're tired and discouraged, quitting feels like relief. It feels like the sensible choice. It feels like you're freeing yourself from the burden of continuing something that isn't working. But that relief is temporary. It lasts for a day, maybe a week, maybe a month. And then it transforms into something else entirely. It transforms into the permanent weight of knowing you'll never know what was possible. And that weight, that regret, is far heavier than any effort you could ever expend. Here's what I've learned from talking to thousands of people over the years. Nobody lies on their deathbed wishing they'd quit sooner. Nobody reaches the end of their life grateful they gave up when things got difficult. But I've met countless people who carry the burden of abandoned dreams. People who wonder, what if I just kept going? What if I'd given it one more month, one more year? And that question, that unanswerable question, becomes a ghost that haunts them. Now, let me tell you why quitting is so dangerous. It's not just that you lose the specific goal you were working toward. It's that you establish a pattern. You teach yourself that when things get hard, the appropriate response is to quit. And once you learn that lesson, once you make that choice, it becomes easier to make it again and again. Pretty soon, quitting isn't just what you did, it's who you are. It becomes your default response to difficulty. And when that happens, you don't just lose one dream, you lose the ability to achieve any dream. Because here's the truth, everything worth achieving requires you to push through the point where most people quit. Everything. There are no exceptions. The business, the marriage, the creative work, the personal transformation, all of it demands that you continue when continuing seems impossible. So when you quit, you're not just abandoning this particular goal. You're training yourself to abandon the next one, and the one after that. But here's the other side of that coin, and this is the part that should encourage you. If quitting is a habit that can be learned, then persisting is also a habit that can be learned. And every time you choose to continue when you want to quit, you're strengthening that habit. You're becoming the kind of person who finishes what they start. You're building the most valuable characteristic you can possibly develop, the ability to see things through. And once you develop that characteristic, it changes everything. Not just this goal, but every goal that comes after. Because you know, deep in your bones, that you're the kind of person who doesn't quit. And that knowledge gives you power that people who haven't developed that quality can't even imagine. Think about what you're actually choosing between. On one hand, you can quit right now. You can walk away from the discomfort, the uncertainty, the difficulty, and in exchange, you get temporary relief followed by permanent regret, and the knowledge that when things got tough, you folded. On the other hand, you can continue. You can push through. You can stay in the game. And in exchange, you get either success, which is wonderful, or you get the knowledge that you gave it everything you had, that you didn't quit, that you're the kind of person who sees things through. And even if the specific goal doesn't work out exactly as you planned, you've gained something far more valuable, the certainty that you didn't abandon yourself. The certainty that when your future self looks back on this moment, they'll see someone who had courage, someone who persisted, someone who refused to guarantee their own defeat. Because that's what quitting does. It guarantees the very outcome you're afraid of. It makes certain that the thing you're working toward will never happen. But continuing keeps possibility alive. And as long as possibility is alive, success is still on the table. So here's your choice, presented as simply as I can make it. Quit now and guarantee you'll never know what was possible. Or continue and give yourself a chance. When you put it that way, there's really only one choice. Keep going. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to look at that goal you've been working toward, that business, that skill, that dream, that transformation. And I want you to make a commitment, not a wish, not a hope, a commitment. Commit to 90 more days, just 90 days. Don't judge your progress. Don't evaluate your results. Don't listen to the doubts. Just show up and do the work for 90 more days. Because I promise you this, if you quit now, you'll spend the rest of your life wondering what would have happened if you just held on a little longer. And that regret, that wondering, that's a heavier burden than any effort you'll expend. But if you persist, if you keep showing up, keep learning, keep adjusting, keep believing, you'll discover something remarkable. You'll discover that the turning point you were looking for wasn't somewhere in the distant future. It was right there, just beyond the point where you felt like quitting. Your breakthrough is closer than you think, but you'll only reach it if you refuse to quit. So don't quit when nothing is working. That's precisely when everything is about to change. Take the next step. Do the work. Trust the process. Your moment is coming. This is Earl Nightingale reminding you you become what you think about. And if you think about persisting, if you think about continuing when others quit, you will become the person who succeeds. Good night and good luck.